The message arrived on a Tuesday, which Captain Sarah Chun found particularly offensive. Tuesdays were meant for routine maintenance checks and catching up on paperwork, not for dealing with galactic ultimatums from species that couldn't even pronounce the word taco. The holographic projection filled the bridge of the UE's Pioneer, casting everything in an unsettling purple glow. A being that looked like someone had tried to sculpt a mantis out of chrome and given up halfway appeared before them. Its voice resonated through the ship's speakers with all the warmth of a tax audit. Primitive species designation Earthhuman, you have been summoned before the Eternal Galactic Tribunal. Your unauthorized expansion into the cosmic territories has been noted. You will present yourselves at the Celestial Citadel within one solar. Rotation to receive judgment and pay appropriate tribute. Failure to comply will result in immediate stellar sanctions. The message ended with what Sarah assumed was meant to be an impressive flash of light, but looked more like a disco ball having an existential crisis. She turned to her bridge crew, who were all staring at the now empty space where the hologram had been. "Well," said Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her navigation officer, "that was dramatically unnecessary. Did they just call us primitive while using a hologram that my nephew could make better on his tablet?" asked Commander Yuki Tanaka, the ship's science officer. Sarah leaned back in her captain's chair, which squeaked in a way that completely undermined any attempt at looking authoritative. "Set course for these coordinates they've sent. And somebody call Earth. Tell them we're going to need our secret weapon." "The quantum torpedoes?" Webb asked hopefully. "No, Marcus. Something far more destructive," Sarah smiled. "We're going to need a stand-up comedian." The journey to the Celestial Citadel took 18 hours through hyperspace, which gave Sarah's team plenty of time to review the extensive documentation the tribunal had sent. It was 300 pages of demands, written in 12 different languages, none of which were Earth languages, but their universal translator managed to parse most of it. The tribute list was particularly amusing. They want 40% of our annual production of entertainment media. Tanaka read, her eyebrows climbing toward her hairline. They specify they want our moving pictures of impossible events. They mean movies, Webb translated. They want 40% of our movies. They also demand, Tanaka continued, 100 of our finest warriors for their Imperial Guard. 50 tons of what they call crystallized plant sweetness. I think they mean sugar. And complete schematics for our primitive but amusing gravity manipulation devices. They want our elevator blueprints? Sarah asked. Apparently, they find them novel. Sarah rubbed her temples. Humanity had been in space for less than 50 years, had barely colonized 3 systems, and somehow they'd already attracted the attention of what appeared to be the galaxy's most pretentious homeowners association. The Celestial Citadel came into view as they dropped out of hyperspace, and Sarah had to admit it was impressive in the same way a gold-plated toilet was impressive, expensive, unnecessary, and trying. Way too hard. The structure was a massive sphere, surrounded by rotating rings, each one glowing a different color. Ships from hundreds of species orbited it like moths around the world's most expensive lamp, broadcasting standard diplomatic protocols. Webb announced. They're responding with, "Wow, that's a lot of regulations. We need to park in specific zones based on our species' evolutionary track, maintain a distance of exactly 2.7 kilometers from other vessels, and ... We're not allowed to use our engines within their space, because the exhaust might disturb their aesthetic harmony." "Their aesthetic harmony?" Sarah repeated. "Our engines run on controlled fusion. It's literally the cleanest propulsion in known space." "Yes, but apparently the color doesn't match their theme." Sarah's communicator buzzed. Earth had responded to her request. She smiled as she read the message. "Ladies and gentlemen, our secret weapon will meet us at the Citadel. Earth is sending Ambassador James Mitchell. The James Mitchell? Tanaka asked. The comedian who ended the Mars colony uprising by making everyone laugh so hard they forgot what they were fighting about? The very same. They docked at the Citadel after a painful hour of being directed to 17 different docking bays because their ship's design didn't fit the standard aesthetic categories. The docking officer, a gelatinous cube that somehow managed to look condescending, informed them they were being charged a fee for visual disruption. The interior of the Citadel was even more ridiculous than the exterior. Every surface was polished to a mirror shine, which meant Sarah could see infinite reflections of herself, looking increasingly annoyed. The corridors were wide enough to fly a shuttle through, but they were required to walk in single file on a designated path that zigzagged unnecessarily. Their escort was a tall, impossibly thin creature that introduced itself as subordinate adjudicator. Vex Theta the Prolonged? It had 6 arms, each one gesturing in a different direction as it spoke. You will follow me to the preparatory chamber of initial judgment, where you will wait for your pre-trial assessment, after which you will receive your preliminary verdict preview before the actual preliminary verdict, which precedes the trial. Preview, which comes before, how many stages are there? Sarah interrupted. Vex Theta looked offended, which was impressive considering its face was mostly just eyes. The full judicial process contains 47 distinct phases, each essential for proper protocol. 47, Webb whispered. They have 47 stages of judgment for a species they've never even talked to before. They were led through corridors that seemed designed by someone who had heard of efficiency and decided to do the opposite. Every 100 meters, they had to stop at a checkpoint where different aliens scanned them for different things. One checked for unauthorized thoughts, another for excessive moisture, and one particularly bizarre station tested their ability to stand on one foot while humming got the preparatory chamber of initial judgment was a vast circular room with stadium seating rising up on all sides. It was currently empty, except for their small group and Vex Theta, who was explaining the proper sitting protocol. You must sit at a 30-degree angle with your appendages arranged in a non-threatening configuration. Eye contact is forbidden, unless requested. Breathing should be kept to a minimum to avoid disturbing the atmospheric balance. And absolutely no sudden movements, as they might be interpreted as aggressive negotiations. Sarah was about to respond when the doors burst open, and James Mitchell walked in. He was exactly as Sarah remembered him from the news feed's medium height, slightly disheveled brown hair, wearing a suit that looked like it had been specifically chosen to offend every fashion sense in the galaxy. His tie had cartoon rockets on it. Sorry I'm late, he said, his voice carrying perfectly in the massive chamber. I got lost. Your signs are in 14 languages, but none of them seem to agree on which way is up. Vex Theta's eyes widened. You cannot enter the preparatory chamber without proper authorization from the subcommittee for chamber entry, which requires approval from the Board of Preliminary Assessments, which, oh, I got authorization, Mitchell said, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. This guy at the door gave it to me. I think it might be a lunch menu. Hard to tell. Sarah had to bite her lip to keep from laughing as Vex Theta's colors shifted through what she assumed was the alien equivalent of having a stroke. This is highly irregular, Vex Theta managed. Buddy, I'm a human in a giant disco ball being told I can't breathe too loud by a creature that looks like a pipe cleaner had a baby with a stress ball. Everything about this is irregular. And that's when Sarah knew that bringing Mitchell had been the right choice. The Galactic Tribunal had no idea what they were about to face. Asterisk. The laughter protocol, the Grand Tribunal chamber, made the preparatory chamber look like a broom closet. It was a sphere within a sphere, with a judgment platform floating in the center. surrounded by thousands of seats filled with representatives from every known species in the galaxy. The noise was incredible, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, roars, and what sounded like someone playing a xylophone in a blender. Sarah, her crew, and Mitchell were directed to a platform that rose from the floor, lifting them to eye level with the Tribunal Council. The council consisted of 7 beings, each more elaborate than the last. The central figure was High Adjudicator Zormoth the Infinite, a creature that seemed to be made entirely of crystallized light and poor decisions. The primitive species Earth-human stands before this tribunal, accused of unauthorized expansion, failure to register with the Galactic Registry, and most grievously, refusing to acknowledge the supremacy of established cosmic order. Zormoth announced, its voice echoing through the chamber. Mitchell raised his hand. Quick question. How does one authorize expansion in space that nobody owns? Silence, another council member bellowed. This one looked like a fungus that had achieved sentience and immediately regretted it. You will speak only when permitted. But you just asked me a question. That was not a question. It was a statement of your crimes. It literally ended with asking how we plead, Mitchell pointed out. The fungus creature paused, visibly confused. That is different. How? Because we say it is. Mitchell turned to Sarah and stage whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. I think we found the galaxy's middle management. A ripple of something went through the crowd. It took Sarah a moment to realize it was suppressed laughter from some of the assembled species. Zormoth raised what might have been an arm. You will now present your tribute to the tribunal as acknowledgement of your inferior status. About that, Mitchell said, stepping forward. We brought something special. See, on Earth, we have this tradition when meeting new people. We share our culture. And since you asked for our entertainment media, I prepared something just for you. Before anyone could stop him, Mitchell had pulled out a small device and projected a hologram of himself on stage. But this wasn't just any recording. It was from his famous Mars colony performance. So I was reading your laws, Hologram Mitchell began, and I noticed you have 73 different regulations about the proper way to eat. 73. On Earth, we have one rule. Don't chew with your mouth open. Although, looking at some of you, I'm not even sure where your mouths are. The fungus creature started to object, but real Mitchell interrupted. Wait, it gets better. The hologram continued. You know what kills me about advanced civilizations? They always think complicated means sophisticated. Oh, we have 47 stages of judgment. You know what we call 47 stages? Bureaucracy. You know what we call bureaucracy? A bunch of people who couldn't get real jobs making everyone else's life harder. The crystalline being on the far left of the council started making a sound. It took a moment for Sarah to realize. It was laughing. And don't get me started on your tribute demands, Hologram Mitchell went on. 40% of our movies? Have you seen our movies? Half of them are about aliens invading Earth. The other half are about Earth invading aliens. We're basically giving you our plans and our counterplans. That's not tribute. That's market research you should be paying us for. More laughter from the crowd. Several species were translating for others, and the laughter was spreading. Zormoth stood, its form blazing brighter. This is not acceptable. You dare mock the eternal Galactic Tribunal? Mock? Real Mitchell asked innocently. I'm not mocking. I'm observing. There's a difference. Mocking would be pointing out that you call yourselves eternal when your oldest member is what, 3,000 years old? My planet has bacteria older than that. We have cheese older than some of your civilizations. The crowd was no longer hiding. It's laughter. Even some of the council members were struggling to maintain their composure. You know what I think the problem is? Mitchell continued, walking around the platform like he owned it. You've been in charge so long, You've forgotten what it's like to be questioned. You create rules for the sake of having rules. You demand tribute because you can, not because you need it. You've turned running the galaxy into the universe's worst HOA. A OA? Vex Theta asked, confused. Homeowners Association. They're groups on Earth that tell you what color you can paint your house and how long your grass can be. Everyone hates them, but they keep existing because the people who run them have nothing better to do than measure other people's lawns with rulers. The laughter was becoming uncomfortable for the council. Zormoth tried to restore order. Enough. The Earth humans will submit to judgment or face the consequences. What consequences? Mitchell asked. You'll send your fleet to Earth? The planet where we invented nuclear weapons 70 years after we figured out powered flight. The species that looked at space, the infinite, cold, hostile void, and thought, yeah, we could live there? The people who've been practicing killing each other for our entire history and only recently decided to point that energy outward. He paused for effect. Plus, have you seen what we do for entertainment? We strap ourselves to controlled explosions and call it a roller coaster. We jump out of functioning aircraft for fun. We eat peppers that cause actual pain because we're bored. You want to threaten the species that invented bungee jumping? The chamber was in chaos. Half the assembly was laughing. The other half was arguing about whether laughing was appropriate. The council was having what appeared to be a heated debate among themselves. Finally, a small voice spoke up from the crowd. It was a tiny creature, no bigger than Sarah's hand, but its voice was amplified through the chamber's systems. The human speaks truth, it said. We follow these rules because we always have. But why? What purpose do 47 stages of judgment serve, except to waste 47 times the time? Other voices joined in. Species that had been silent for centuries began questioning the tribunal's authority, its methods, its very existence. Zormoth raised all of its appendages. Order, we will have order. Or what? Mitchell asked. You'll judge us harder? Add more stages? Make it an even 50? That did it. The laughter became universal. Even the fungus creature was shaking with what had to be mirth. Sarah watched in amazement as the mighty eternal galactic tribunal, the authority that had governed known space for millennia, was brought low not by weapons or threats, but by comedian with a rocket tie pointing out that the Emperor had no clothes. It took 3 hours for order to be restored, and when it was, everything had changed. The Tribunal Council sat deflated, their authority undermined by the one thing they hadn't prepared for. Being laughed at, Zormoth, in a much subdued voice, addressed the chamber. Perhaps some reassessment of our procedures is in order. I have a suggestion, Mitchell said, pulling out a rolled-up paper. We drew this up on the way here. It's called the Don't Be a Jerk Doctrine. It's 1 page. It basically says, leave everyone alone unless they're hurting someone else. Simple. 1 page? Vex Theta said, scandalized. Our current legal code is 4 million pages. And how many people have read all of it? Silence. That's what I thought. In the end, humanity didn't pay tribute. Instead, they were offered a seat on a reformed council, which they politely declined, suggesting instead a rotating position that different Earth comedians could fill. We'll send a different one every cycle, Sarah proposed. Keep you honest. As they left the Citadel, Mitchell turned to Sarah. You know they're going to hate us for this. Probably, Sarah agreed. But they'll think twice before sending another ultimatum. Plus, Webb added, we just proved humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our stubbornness. What is it then? Tanaka asked. Mitchell grinned. Our ability to find everything, including ourselves. Absolutely ridiculous. The journey back to Earth quiet, but it was the satisfied quiet of a job well done. The Galactic Tribunal had tried to intimidate humanity, but they'd forgotten one crucial fact about humans. We've been dealing with our own bureaucracy for thousands of years. Alien bureaucracy was just bureaucracy with tentacles. Asterisk. Earth received the news with its typical response. Someone immediately started selling t-shirts that said, "My planet got summoned by the Galactic Tribunal, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt." The tribunal never quite recovered its former authority. Within a year, the 47 stages of judgment had been reduced to 3, and those 3 were optional. The tribute system was abolished, replaced with a voluntary cultural exchange program. And in the grand histories of the galaxy, the day the humans came to court would be remembered not as the day Earth submitted, but as the day the entire cosmos learned to laugh at itself. As for James Mitchell, he returned to Earth a hero, though he insisted he'd just done what any human would do when faced with pompous authority: make fun of it until it went away. The galaxy had learned an important lesson: never try to intimidate a species that turned existential dread into a form of entertainment. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, other young species heard the tale and thought the same thing. If the humans could do it, maybe they could too. After all, laughter, as it turned out, was universal.